Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. We got a lot of basketball to talk about today, but frankly, we've got some stuff that's bigger than basketball to talk about off the top. That's obviously what's going on in California. It's going on in Los Angeles right now, well, with the fires that are absolutely devastating the area. Keith, we'll talk about it in a bit, but obviously it's made an impact on the sports world already. But the bigger thing, of course, than sports is what it's meant for people who live in the area, what it's meant. People have lost lives, people have lost homes. Lakers coach JJ Redick, in fact, Shams Charania noted that JJ lost his home in this fires. This is a very, very difficult situation for everybody in the area. So we wanted to make sure we started the show by discussing this and acknowledging what's going on.
Yeah, we know we have a large crossover audience from the Lakers fandom, many of whom either do live in Southern California or have lived in Southern California, but at the very least associate with Southern California in their sports fandom. And this is awful. There are things that are way, way bigger than sports. And, if you're watching this, thankfully, you're able to watch this and you are safe. That is the primary thing that we clearly care about here. It's I'm not trying to make light at all of anything that's been lost, but as they always say, we hear it here in Florida during hurricane season. Things can be replaced, people can't, and we hope that you are safe. We're gonna try to have a little bit of fun later in the show, maybe just give you a little bit of levity, a little bit of, maybe a, smile or two in what's a very difficult time. I'm going to pull this up here. If you find yourself moved to help, you can donate to the Red Cross. There's multiple places you can donate to. The Food Bank of Greater Los Angeles put out that they are really in need of help. They've got a lot of people they need to feed because there's a lot of people who they did not only do not have home, but all of their food is gone as well, and a lot of grocery stores are gone and all kinds of things. But the Red Cross is on the ground. They're trying to do what they do in the face of disasters and show up. And if you find yourself moved to help, you can go to redcross.org. You can call the Red Cross. You can also very easily just text Red Cross to 90999, and that'll do a $10 donation that you can do there. We are hopeful that we get lots and lots of people that will help. It's again, this is I don't particularly care that people are Lakers fans or whatever fans they are.
That stuff doesn't matter.
That does not matter at all. We just want to help people, get to a better place, help them get their lives back on track when they're able to. And let's also own, I just watched the news right before we started recording, and they're still saying it's 0% contained because they just don't have control, because there's been these hurricane force winds on top of it. Hasn't rained more than an inch. I think they said in almost one full calendar year. So everything is dry. It's just it's like the worst possible situation that you can see, and the devastation is horrible. All you need to do is look anywhere on social media and you can see it. And again, if you're able to watch this or listen to this, we're thankful for that, because that means you're safe. For the time being, and we're here for you. We're thinking of you, and we want everybody to make it through this on the other side. And I know people they'll rebuild. They'll come back strong.
Yes, indeed. And while we're on the topic here, the Lakers and Hornets game for tonight has indeed been postponed. No surprise. We saw this with hockey last night. I don't know what's going to happen with the Rams game as well. There's talks of moving that, but the NBA officially announcing, and this is the right call, that the game is postponed. As I mentioned, it's not just people in the region as well. Certainly, fans getting to the game has to be a concern, obviously, but is it the right time to even have a game? On top of that, you've got players, you've got team personnel that are affected. As I mentioned, JJ Redick lost his home. A lot of the players are worrying about protecting their families and making sure that's all taken care of. So it's not the right time for a basketball game. It's not been announced currently when the game will be rescheduled for. Typically, they look for a spot later on in the season, but again, they haven't gotten to that point yet. All we know is the Lakers and Hornets game tonight has been postponed. It won't be happening. and then they will announce later on when that's going to be rescheduled. If you happen to have tickets for the game, they have announced that those tickets will be honored on the rescheduled date. So don't worry, you didn't lose your tickets or anything like that. If you happen to have tickets for the game, those will be honored for whenever it is the game is rescheduled for. But the NBA's got to look at logistics and see what's going on in the area and all that before figuring out what that date's going to be.
And quite frankly, the city, county, state services, they don't need to be focused on pulling
No,
even one single person to be at a basketball game, whether
no.
it's directing traffic or providing security or emergency services. They have far bigger things to worry about looking forward. The Lakers and Clippers, because this can now happen with the Clippers having their own arena. They both play Saturday night. Is the next scheduled game, I believe it is,
Mm-hmm.
at home. And we'll see. Right, that's kind of the approach you need to take at this point. Is we'll see. With this, there was, as you said, Kawhi Leonard. News broke yesterday that he had to leave the team because
Yeah.
it sounds like his family was greatly impacted. And I'll step on the soapbox very briefly. The people who are making even the jokes about he doesn't want to play, you're gross. Like, don't,
I've
like,
seen some
it's
of that.
not, just awful. Like, it just, you're not funny. None of those things are, none of this is funny. So leave that stuff alone. Ty Lue said it was done with full support. And he mentioned they had multiple other staffers that weren't there. Because they had to go home. As you said, it's been reported now that JJ Redick lost his home. But reported also that his family is safe, which again, that's all that really matters,
Yeah.
right? All the rest of this stuff can be fixed. So best, are just brutal, just absolutely awful, stuff going on, and we'll now we'll endeavor to do a basketball show here and have a little bit of fun because again, if you're watching this, we're thankful you're safe, and
Yep.
let's give you a little bit of levity here during what's ultimately an extremely tough time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's go here, Keith. We got an absolutely epic game last
Whew,
night
yeah, we
between the
did.
Cavs and the Thunder. It was unbelievable what we saw to those two teams. I mean, talk about high level basketball. Both, I mean, just teams throwing haymakers at each other. And I love there's two big takeaways that I've got from this beyond just yes, the Cavs won. What does this mean for the playoff race and all that kind of stuff? And there's some stuff SGA said that we'll get into in a bit and all that. But there's two big things. Number one, it goes to show that game to me was a great example of how in today's NBA you simply can't have weaknesses and you can't make mistakes because teams are too damn good. And both of those teams just took turns going back and forth. Any little slip up, they immediately recognized it and countered it. The punching and counter punching going back and forth between those two sides was absolutely epic. And then the second thing, Keith, and then I know you've got a ton to say on this. My second thing is, well done, NBA,
Yeah.
for promoting the hell out of that game as they should have, as this big Titanic matchup, because you don't typically think of the Thunder and the Cavs as two as like the glamour franchises in the NBA, but that was awesome basketball, and it was great to see the league, despite SGA may not have the star power of say LeBron or whatever, and the same thing on the Cavs side. Donovan Mitchell isn't as big of a name as Kevin Durant, but seeing the way the NBA promoted that. They made it a big time event, and more of that, please, from the NBA, because that I have no idea what the numbers look like. I don't particularly care. That game was incredible.
Yeah, it was great for the league too. If people are kind of in between football, right? Regular season football's over. Now they're moving over. We didn't have it. College playoffs don't pick up again until tonight, and NFL playoffs don't start till this weekend. So people, might have been like, all right, let me tune into an NBA game, and I hear these two teams are pretty good. And like you said, good job NBA, good job Cavs and Thunder for delivering too, because it feels like a lot of times we get super excited about one of these games and then it just doesn't come through, right? One of the teams just, they have such an off shooting night that it ends up a blowout or something. And these guys, I mean, you're absolutely right. These guys were trading, shot making down the stretch, back and forth, just unbelievable basketball. It's so much fun to watch, so much like just strategy and nuance. The
Yeah.
Cavs went to a zone late in the game, which really the Thunder need another ball handler. And I know
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren will help them, but they need one more guy who can really put the ball in his hands and really, do something off the bounce. And you're starting to hear a lot of people. Cason Wallace played really well for them, but he's not quite there. He's still kind of really, I mean, that's fine. He's a second-year guy. He's
Sure.
growing into that role. But it's really, if SGA and Jalen Williams can't get him a shot right now, they become, I don't want to say easy to defend, but easier to defend.
Mhm.
And you saw the Cavs, the passing by big men in this game.
Oh, so good.
Hartenstein with 8 assists for the Thunder. The Allen and Mobley combined for 13 assists. Donovan Mitchell did not shoot well. And the Cavs got Max Strus stepped up, Ty Jerome stepped up. Just an awesome game. If you missed it for any reason, I had a friend of ours say, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch the highlights," and we're like, "No,
You'll
watch
watch the
the
whole
whole
game.
thing."
Yeah.
Go watch the whole thing. It's available, over on the NBA site. You can pull it up now and watch it. And trust me, even if you know the outcome, it's still going to be well worth it. You'll enjoy watching. This was, for my money, best game we've seen in the league this year.
Yeah, it was absolutely epic. It really, it was one of those games where it felt like every player on the team, on each team on the court, was capable of making a play, of doing what the team, of making a big moment happen. Ty Jerome, I thought, was fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought he did some great things out there. The turnovers were a bit rough, but the shot making was great from, smart play. There was a play where he got on a fast break and then used his body to shield the defender perfectly and got up for a layup that I'm like, man, a lot of players, especially guys coming off the bench, would not navigate that play properly. He had to read all the angles just right in order to score it, and he did. Jarrett Allen was an absolute monster in the paint for Cleveland. He was killing everybody in there. What he was doing, Evan Mobley, you're right, the passing. And this is why, Evan Mobley did take 3 threes. He does have to be defended out there, but people say, well, how do the Cavs get away with having 2 bigs on the floor? Part of it is because of the passing and the ball handling, and you can do all kinds of dribble handoff stuff and things like that with Evan Mobley, and that allows them to have the 2 bigs out there. They're not 2 traditional kind of clunky, just bigs who just take up space. And it was just an awesome game. I mean,
it really
you
was.
had no idea who the crowd was into it. The teams were into it. It was a playoff atmosphere. I mean, what a great night for the NBA, and a great, I think it's a window into where the game is headed. Where basketball is headed, where you've got 5 guys on the court at all times that can do things. You've got your stars, but man, you needed every single player to be in sync, locked in the entire game, and both sides went back and forth. And the great thing, Keith, they play again in like a week.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Which is going to be great too. Yeah, that part's going to be so fun. Here's a good way how people can know how good this game was. I barely tweeted during it because I was so locked in watching. Like I just wanted to watch. I just wanted to, be locked in on the moment and just watch the game. And I had an absolute blast. It was like you said, man, this was just unbelievable. And we get it again in a couple weeks, or in a week. I think it's next week. We get them again. And this
kind of wish there was a little more of a break.
Really good. Yeah, a little bit more of a break.
Give me 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, we'll take it, right? It's
Sure.
Next Thursday, the 16th. Their return visit. Cavs go to Oklahoma City, so that'll be fun. Oklahoma City's probably going to be ready to.
They'll be rocking.
Let's get a little bit of payback here.
Yep.
Cleveland, meanwhile, 11-game win streak now. They've created all kinds of distance at the top of the conference. The Cavs the Thunder rather had already created all kinds of distance. So, right now, I was asked earlier on radio, are these teams, title contenders? And I said, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
For sure.
Like, there's no reason why anybody should think they're not title contenders. And that's no knock on a whole bunch of other teams who I think are title contenders too. But I would put these 2 teams right up there with anybody at this point.
Yeah, they're playing phenomenal basketball, it's great to see. Fun basketball too. Don't miss game 2. That's for sure. If you miss game 1, go watch game 1. Don't miss game 2 between these 2 teams, because it was absolutely epic. All right, let's. I think we are contractually obligated at this point to do an update on Jimmy Butler. Do we need the drop for this?
Nah, we'll skip the drop today because it's not as much a Jimmy Butler update as it
Yeah,
is kind of more of a Miami Heat update. But
sure.
to be quite frankly, I'm lazy and I didn't want to change the banner title, so I left it as it was. Yeah, it's so the update here is the Heat are. We'll talk. Well, let's talk a couple different things here. One, they have. It's been reported they've had substantial trade talks, but nothing's
Yeah.
close yet. They haven't gotten anything close. I guess it's kind of tied in related, but Bradley Beal's agent came out in an interview with Brian Windhorst on ESPN and said he will waive the no trade clause to allow a trade to go through, but there's no world where he's ever going to give it up fully. So
Yeah.
that kind of removes that. If any teams are thinking, all right, well, we'll get him, but we're going to get him to completely give up the no trade clause. Mark Bartelstein said, nope, not happening, not going to be a thing. Back to the Heat side, again, we can go here because it's the related topic. The Heat want back players who can help them, but no long-term money because they are locked in on planning for max cap space in 2026. Makes sense. That's where they want to go. They
That's
buy.
difficult.
It's very difficult to pull that off. It's going to be a really tight needle to thread. It probably involves you're going to have to get a third team in there if you're really doing that. And I would say no money back is that's not overly likely, but minimal money back, that's probably fine, right? That's probably
Yeah.
where they would go. But summer 2026, you just pulled up the Heat cap sheet. It's Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and then you're gonna have Khalil Ware and Jaime Jaquez on the roster, and then probably one or two other players. Most likely just the way it will go. Teams very rarely go into an offseason with like two or three guys under contract. So yeah, I mean they should be in a spot where they have a whole bunch of cap space to work with. I did some really rough numbers after seeing that report, and it was let me pull it up to make sure I'm not just speaking out of turn here. I had them at probably about 70 million ish in cap space, somewhere between 60 and 70 million. So that's enough to get a max guy. And if you're thinking, all right, max guy, put him with Adebayo and Hero, and we feel pretty good about it. All right, I can see why that's what the plan is.
Well, and what came out too from Windhorst was that the Heat are preparing to have Jimmy Butler back on their roster. And that tells me two things. Okay, I think there's two things that are important there. Number one is that the offers are simply not good enough. So that's the Heat kind of pushing back and saying, well, I guess we're just going to hang on to him. Then we'll just have him on our roster, and that'll be that. So that's kind of putting out there that, hey, if you really want Jimmy Butler, you're going to have to increase your offer. But the second thing is, I don't think the NBA is going to let the Miami Heat just send him away and have him be away from the team for the rest of the season. He falls under that superstar protocol, which says that you can't just bench a guy just to bench him if they're a star level player. And so if we get past this 7 games, which is coming up, I think Jimmy Butler will actually have to play for a Miami. Now, maybe both sides would prefer not to, but this is where I don't think you get around that NBA rule to prevent teams from just resting stars. So I think he's actually going to have to play unless a trade can be found. And I think that's kind of the Heat putting out there. Yeah, we're expecting to have him on the roster or expecting to have him there unless somebody steps in and gives them what they want, essentially.
And I think you're spot on with that and the whole idea of, all right, just haven't been good enough offers yet. They are currently on a West Coast trip. They played at Sacramento, at Golden State. They play still games to come at Utah, at Portland, at the Clippers, at the Lakers. So we're still, the Lakers game would be the 15th. That's the suspension. That's the duration of the suspension is through the Lakers game. So really Friday, January 17th. Yes, the real deadline is the trade deadline, but the Heat are also working a little bit under a deadline of, all right, let's try to get him traded by before that game on the 17th, because you don't want to then have to go through this whole thing of like, hey, welcome back to the team. Let's go. Right. But yeah, I mean, if the offers aren't good enough, I feel very confident in saying Miami's not just going to take an offer just to get him traded.
No.
They're only going to do this if it makes sense for them, and they feel like it's an offer that at least meets the goal of improves us long term after. this season. It's going to be hard to thread that needle of let's get players who can help now that also don't have long-term money. I mean, we're talking, I mean, trade him to New Orleans for Brandon Ingram. Like, I don't know. Like that.
Yeah, what
Just
do you
gets a
do?
little
How do you
wild.
make
Yeah.
that work? Like, and then
Yeah.
would New Orleans want Jimmy? Does that make sense? Like, that's and then Keith, it ultimately all rolls up under the same. And I'm glad you brought up Brandon Ingram. It's a very similar conversation. Who wants to give Jimmy Butler his next contract? The Phoenix Suns do, and that's why he's trying to get, or part of why he's trying to get to Phoenix. But aside from Phoenix, who has to find a taker for Bradley Beal in order to make it happen, and a place Bradley Beal wants to go, very difficult to thread that needle as well. Aside from Phoenix, who wants to give Jimmy another contract? That's also a issue here. On top of the fact that Jimmy Butler is scaring away certain teams, the Bucks, the Grizzlies. He said no, thank you. So I mean, it feels like we're just whittling this down. I know I used this analogy years ago. I think it was in a Russell Westbrook situation, but we were talking about trades for him. But it feels like that the classic guess who game where you're flipping down certain characters, right? All right, you got the whole league in front of you. How many teams want Jimmy Butler on their roster right now? All right, flip down like half the league. Okay, how many teams want to give Jimmy Butler his next contract? Okay, flip down a few more. How many of those teams still standing have pieces the Miami Heat want? Okay, flip that. You know, how many teams can then get into a 3-team trade? Flip that down the. I feel like we're kind of at a
Jimmy
point where
Butler doesn't want to play for cities that begin with M, as we
exactly. Like, sorry,
so cut them out as well. Yeah,
right.
No, that's a fun game.
Still standing?
Too. That's a fun game. Guess who?
It is,
right. Like, are you wearing a hat? Is he bald? Does she have green eyes? Like, yeah, I loved that game back in the day.
The best is when
one of my friends always cheated. Like, and then
that's lame.
He cheated in Battleship too. He wasn't a very good friend. It was more of he was a kid in the neighborhood, that we hung out with.
He was that friend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kind of no one else was around and, didn't like sports either. So like I struggle. Which as a, in my 40s, I still struggle with people who don't really like sports. Like I don't understand that mindset but that's a flaw on me. I fully own, but yeah, sorry. This is going off the rails. We can
I totally understand. Totally understand where you were going with that, and made me think of a few things immediately about, oh yeah, it's like that kid I remember growing up with. Anyway, yeah, who is it that is buying on Jimmy Butler right now?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like you could pick some teams that could use him, but does Jimmy want to be with those teams? It's a very complicated situation to try. I still think, even with all that's been put out there, by the trade deadline, he's somewhere else. I think he's going to be, but it's not an easy solution. It's not just a quick, oh yeah, Jimmy's on the trade market and boom, next day, done deal. I think a number of teams checked in, seeing if Miami was a very motivated seller, like as they would take an offer that you wouldn't expect them to, and that's not the case. So now it becomes kind of a waiting game to see who really wants him and then who really wants to give him that next contract. I know there's rumors out there about a 2-year deal with Phoenix, but maybe that could open up some more suitors if he's willing to do a short-term deal rather than long-term. But that's going to be a big factor in all this too. What does the next contract look like, and which teams are actually willing to give that to him?
Yeah, and it almost has to be a short-term deal because he'll be running into the over 38 rule coming up here because he is 35 years old. So that you run into that stuff. But I'll say this: if this was the old CBA, he'd be in Phoenix already. They would have put Nurkic and Grayson Allen and Okogie and pile up a bunch of contracts, and that's how they would have done it. In the new CBA, you can't do that anymore. That's not an option for a team like the Suns. So that means it's Bradley Beal. We've discussed ad nauseum all the complications with that. That's tough. 2 other minor things because they're Suns related. Bradley Beal, the Suns are insistent that it has nothing to do with him trying to get him to accept the trade, that we moved him to the bench. Okay.
Even if it was, they wouldn't say it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Yusuf Nurkic came out, and Dwayne Rankin, who covers the team for, I think it's the Arizona Republic, maybe. But he Nurkic gave an interview, and he basically said, hey, yeah, back in the day, this would have been a problem that I got benched. He goes, but he's like, I'm an older player now. I've kind of been through benching and trade rumors. I'm not going to cause any issues, which a bunch of people are like, what are they going to do? Bench you more? Like who cares if you cause issues? You're not a guy like that. But I kind of respect Nurkic, his opinion of basically saying like, yeah, when I got benched by Denver for Nikola Jokic, he was not happy. Remember, that was like a whole thing. Then is like, is this the right move? Should they be doing this and all that? And then ultimately he got traded, and and Nurkic kind of left it as it was. But it's I mean, I get where he's coming from now, where he's kind of like, hey, I'm not going to cause problems, because I think he's also knows there's a good chance I'm getting traded, and I don't want a team being like, are we bringing in this dude who's acting like a jerk, or are we going to bring in somebody who can be positive contributor to our team? So I get where he's coming from.
He had a quote. I'm looking at it here. He said, they were completely transparent that they're not looking to shop us or whatever, but also we're not kids.
Yeah.
like he knows, like the team may be telling you, no, we're not shopping. Yes, they are. They're trying to trade you, dude. Like that's
100%. Yeah. He's not dumb. Like he's been there, done that. Now he's been around a long time. It's not you're not catching him off guard.
Yeah. All right, let's jump over to a team that Jimmy Butler does not want to go to, the Milwaukee Bucks. Chris Middleton moved to the bench. Now he's coming back here and getting back into the swing of things. Is this a long-term move, or is this just a while he's getting his legs under him type situation?
It sounds like it's short term in Middleton's opinion. He basically said his answer was, for the time being, this is what I need to do. Doc Rivers didn't really commit to it being short or long term. He basically said he's dealing with a minutes restriction still, and it's not. We decided the best way to handle his minutes restriction and play him in the most effective minutes, where he can really play high leverage, was to bring him off the bench. And I kind of get where the Bucks are coming from with that. We often see that be a thing where teams feel like, yeah, we can control the minutes a little bit better with this. And Doc said about Middleton too, we all see it. He looks really good one game. He's moving really well. Then the next game out, he's not moving so well. So my guess is we're going to see, where this goes with Chris Middleton. Because I also went back and listened as well to some of his comments. He doesn't sound overly thrilled about this, which I get where he's coming from, right? He's always been a starter, wants to be a starter. So, but I think we're just in a spot where, this kind of is what it is. This is not like Bradley Beal, where I 100% think Bradley Beal was moved to the bench in part because we want to trade him in Phoenix. I don't think that's the case with Middleton, but I do think this is one where I don't know that Chris Middleton finishes his career with the Bucks.
Yeah,
I think the contract is pretty big. If they want to make upgrades, there's only certain ways to do it, and I think trading Chris Middleton might be one of the ways that they need to do it.
Well, and that's part of that is, as a second tier apron team, it makes it difficult for them to stack salaries and things of that nature. So, I mean, looking at the deal for Middleton right now, $31.6 million, and then next season he's at $34 million and change. Is that, I mean, pretty high likelihood he's picking up that option?
Yeah, I'd be surprised at this point. If everything was going great with him in Milwaukee, I would say he'd be a good candidate to decline that, but then tack a couple more years on, like 3 years,
an extension,
70 million or something like that. And that's how he does it. But I don't think we're going to see it play out that way. I will say this one thing, because this is a lot of Bucks fans have been asking about this. So it's a great question and good for us to address here. They are a second apron team, but they're only into the second apron by like 6 million. So if they could get somebody to take Pat Connaughton's contract on, all of a sudden their second apron concerns are, I'm not going to say they're removed, they just get lessened, because then you could talk about, let's just say they were trying to get Jimmy Butler. All right, we're going to trade Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis and one other deal, and we're going to get in on Chris Middleton or in on Jimmy Butler,
right?
If that's where they wanted to go, like that, those possibilities do open up, and that's there's other ways to get there, obviously, too. Yes, because it's 6 million. They could move Bobby Portis, who would, his contract fits inside any team that has the full non-taxpayer MLE amount. The challenge with that one is he's their sixth man. Like they're probably not moving him. So I don't think that. I think it would be Connaughton if you've been not, or if you haven't been paying a lot of attention to the Bucks. He doesn't play anymore. He's completely out of their rotation.
Hmm.
He's been supplanted by AJ Green and Gary Trent. They get all the minutes. They used to go, excuse me, to Pat Connaughton. So I there's ways the Bucks can get a lot more active. Whereas, like, if you're the Suns, you're so far over the second apron, it's almost impossible for them to get down to that number. Same thing with the Timberwolves. You're going to be dealing with that, basically for the rest of the season.
Can that take place simultaneously, like in one move, where you get under the second tier apron in one trade, and at the same time you're executing the aggregation, or do you have to do the trade to get under the second tier apron first, and then you can aggregate players?
Yeah, it's a great question. You can do it one of two ways. As long as they finish under the second apron, they're fine. So if it was like, and I'm just completely making this up, if it was a 3-team trade where Pat Connaughton's going into Detroit's cap space, and then they are going to get Middleton, Portis, and whoever for Butler, that could all be one big trade. And it just becomes then about, all right, we finished under the second apron. We're okay. Now your challenge there is, are you under enough to then fill out your roster?
Right.
Like the Knicks, we talked about, they've been dealing with that all season long. So that would be a challenge. The other option would be do it as two different things. You move Connaughton out and then you go. Or it might even be one where it is functionally, it's getting reported as one big thing, but the way it's going to actually work is multiple different trades, because there becomes issues when you get into 3-team or more team trades, because then there's touch rules that have to be satisfied, and those can get to be a challenge, especially if you're moving around draft pick capital and all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, there's ways. It's just important to note that the Bucks are within range. The Suns are 31 million over the second apron. That's not in range. You're not getting there.
Right.
The Timberwolves are 16 million over the second apron. They're not getting there. Boston's only 7.6 over, but they don't have a contract that's not in their rotation that they can move that gets them there easily. Anything they would do would be, all right, we're trading like 3 guys out, and then that spot you have to fill out later.
Right. Okay. Good to know. All right, let's jump over here to OKC. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander says he will not leave the Thunder. This is his direct quote. Said, "I can only speak for myself. I love Oklahoma City, and I can't see a world where I'm not in Oklahoma City. I'm comfortable where I am. I like where I am. I love the people in the organization, love the people around me, and those are the things that matter. I go to work every day with a smile on my face. Personally, the market doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter to a certain extent. But as long as I enjoy, I like that to a certain extent. But as long as I enjoy what I'm doing at a very high level, I love the people around, and I'm doing it." Yeah, I mean, of
I'm
course,
not taking a minimum deal to stay with the Thunder and allow us to do all kinds of other things, but I don't want to leave as long as they don't get stupid.
right.
Like, that's pretty much it.
Well, but he was asked also about the market, and do you have, like, there was a point, like Keith, we both have our roots in the 80s. You go back then, and it was, you want to be a star, you got to be in one of the big cities. You got to be in LA, you got to be in New York, you got to be in Boston, you got to be in Chicago, right? You got to be in one of those big time cities, those big markets. And I think that it is less true today than it was back then. You don't have to be in a big, it certainly helps. There's no denying there's a benefit to it, but it's not as much with social media and all that kind of stuff being the way it is now. It's not as big of a factor, but it's also, there's some guys who just, they want to be in the big city. They want to be in that kind of environment. They want the nightlife. They want all of those things. So I'm not saying OKC doesn't have those things, but it's probably not on the same level as like a Miami or an LA or New York, or right, like places like that. But hearing SGA say, "No, I really like it here, and I want to stay," that's got to be comforting to the Thunder, who are, I mean, overall they're a small market team, but SGA is saying, "No, I really like it here," and that's, I think it's fair for us to keep in mind that we can't assume that every superstar has this hell-bent desire to get to a big market. That's not always the lifestyle that every single player is looking to lead.
Yeah, 100%. The great example was in OKC. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook became global superstars playing for the Thunder.
Yep.
in one of the smallest markets in not just in the NBA, but in the entirety of professional sports. And that it's you don't have to be in New York anymore, or LA, or even in Miami or Chicago, Boston, those places.
Yep.
That it's there's things that help with that. Like they talk about, I can't remember who it was. Somebody went to the Knicks and was like, I went from doing like the local Ford dealership commercial for like 500K or whatever to doing like commercial for a furniture store in New York City for like 5 million. And those are different things, right? That's sometimes what market size affords you. That's different. I think too with SGA, and let's say if we just talk the basics around this, he's got 2 more years left on his contract after this one. And because we got to remember, if we go back to when he signed that extension, he was not a superstar at that time. He was very good, looked like he was going to be great, but he was not an MVP candidate. So unlike Jason Tatum and Donovan Mitchell, who got player options, which allowed them to get out of their contracts and then get on to the next one, SGA doesn't have that. He's just got 2 straight years left on his deal. He becomes extension eligible this summer. He could sign a 4-year, because barring complete disaster, he's going to be an all NBA guy. He's going to be an NBA or an MVP candidate. In some people's minds, he should be the
He might win it. Yeah.
So he'll be eligible to add 4 years, but it's not the full supermax of 5 years. That's what, if we go back, Devin Booker did, Karl-Anthony Towns did. They did the 4-year deals when they could do it. Or he may say, you know what, I want to wait because I want to cash in and get that full 5th year, because he's already going to have met the markers. Assuming the season goes the rest of the way like we think, he'll already have met his markers to be eligible for it, much like Luka had already met it long before his final year came up. So I'm not going to panic if he doesn't extend this summer, because he may want to wait and cash in and do the full 5 years. Or he may say, you know what, let me do 4. This time around, he's going to get the player option. He'll get the player option, and he's back on the market when he's like, what would that be? He'd be like in his early 30s and enough to get one more big contract in at that point. So that may be the way, this plays out with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Last point on this. Why is he eligible for Supermax, even though the Thunder traded for him? Because they traded for him when he was on his rookie scale deal. The qualifiers are it's either with the team that drafted you or the team that or you were moved there while on your rookie scale contract. So that's where SGA is. Great place. And it's if I'm Sam Presti, Thunder, Mark Daignault, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and everybody else, I'm like, let's go. Let's go. Like one less thing we don't even have to enter our minds to worry about with this is we've got this guy in the fold, and we'll happily hand him a max, and then we'll deal with all the rest of it down the line as this team starts to get really expensive.
For sure. Absolutely. All right. Some more good news that we've got here. Paolo Banchero back on Friday. Finally.
Yeah.
He's back in action. It's great. I mean, one of the best scorers in the NBA. Was great. He only played 5 games before getting injured. Bizarre. 2 oblique tears for the Orlando Magic with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. But Paolo now back in action. The Magic have done a fairly nice job of kind of staying afloat without their guys, without Franz, Jalen Suggs has been dealing with a back issue. They've got Gary Harris has been. They've been missing a number of guys.
Wagner is out for
the season. Yeah. It's been one thing after another for Orlando, and yet here they are. They're still the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and now they're getting Paolo Banchero back. And I'm so excited, Keith. I was looking at him as a guy that was going to take that next step, at least on the national stage, get more recognition this season. And so I'm excited to see him back in action with Orlando and to see what this team can do from here on out.
Yeah, look at this guy. He's a pro, everybody. I was going to say, pull up standings. 4th place, sitting right there in striking distance of the Knicks, and little game and a half cushion over the Bucks. So good stuff for the Magic. They have really played well. All of a sudden, the East teams are starting to play pretty good basketball here, which we kind of knew this would be it. They were not going to stay where it's going to be like 6 teams over 500.
Yeah.
Pacers. I know we're on a Magic topic, but the Pacers, I wrote about this for the basketball bulletin and the game notes. They're up to 10th in pace now after being down around 20th in the first portion of the season. They're really back to looking like the Pacers again. They're flying up and down the floor. They've won 4 straight. The Detroit Pistons, 5 in a row. They're over 500. Like,
Look at
let's
that.
go Pistons. Like, that is phenomenal for them. The Hawks, that Trey, we didn't talk about it because we didn't record yesterday. That Trae Young half-court buzzer beater, like, come on, man. Like, that was, a blast to see that go down. So, and Philly is still kind of lurking, right? They, God forbid they could ever get those guys on the court long enough, then, maybe they'll make their run. But going back to Orlando, they've persevered, right? They've done it. We said it, just get through it. Then it was like, all right, now Franz is down. All right, now Suggs is hurt too. Like, all right, at some point you're like, well, this is turning into Grizzlies of last year or the Pelicans of this year. Like, great season, just going to be wrecked. But they hung in. Jamal Mosley can really coach, and that team plays super hard. They play really great defense. I'm really happy, for the Magic. And I thought it was interesting with Paulo Banchero too. I don't know if you saw his quotes today. They asked him, how did you get hurt? And he said, he's like, yeah, I made this weird twisting movement while I jumped, and that's it. But then he said, I think part of it was I was exhausted. I was hurting already, but I was playing so well, they didn't want to come out of the game. So I didn't say anything. And he said, and they were like, so what's the lesson? He's like, lesson is when something doesn't feel right, you tell the trainers and get it looked at and see what it is. So, not, now Chime people can say soft or whatever if they want. But if you remember back, this was the one where he had almost a triple double. He had like 30 something points at halftime against the Bulls, I think it was. Mm-hmm. It was maybe the Bulls. And then he got hurt in that game in the second half. And he's been out since then. So, yeah, it's huge for the Magic to get Banchero back.
Right. Can't wait to see him back in action. Big time for the Magic, and we'll see what this allows them to do as we head into the trade deadline. I would assume there'll be, I'm not saying they're going to make a move, but I'll assume there'll be a buyer and try to make a real push here to make a run at the Knicks. Keith, we got this. Dylan Harper, the consensus number 2 in the 2025 NBA draft. And I've seen some circles that have him perhaps as number 1. I don't think that's the consensus. It's still Cooper Flagg is the consensus, but I don't think it's unanimous right now that it's not Dylan Harper.
No, you're absolutely right. The teams, most teams are still Cooper Flagg. If the draft was today, would still be Cooper Flagg. But there are teams that are like, hey, Harper's made it a conversation, which was not the expected thing. If anybody was going to make it a conversation, the expectation would be his Rutgers teammate, Ace Bailey, was going to be the one to do that. He hasn't done quite as well. Harper has played really well. Big guard. This is Ron Harper's other kid. Ron Harper Jr. is back in the NBA on a 2-way with the Pistons. But Dylan Harper, his other son, expected to be an even better player. He is really, really good. He can really play. He can really run an offense. He can get his own shot. His jumper's a little shaky, but that's true of a lot of the guys coming into this draft class. But the form looks good. I think with time, he's going to be a really good shooter. And the big thing is when you're like 6'5", 6'6" guard that can get where you want to be on the floor, the jumper can take a little bit to come around and you're still okay. So, yeah, it's just little fun notebook. ESPN did an updated mock draft now that we're in the conference play in college basketball around. And Harper, they moved him up to 2. And basically, as it says there, wrote, like, this is kind of now consensus on this. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this draft play out. I said it the other day, mad about 8-ish guys that I think might have been able to be the number 1 pick in this past draft that are going to be in this draft class, which is, I mean, that tells you loaded with talent. There's going to be a lot more to come, from us here on that as we get closer and into draft season and all that stuff. But wanted to just put this little note in there because it's interesting, for the people who might be like, oh, all right, so we do have another kind of contender there for top pick.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. I can't wait to start sinking our teeth into draft coverage as we get closer and closer to that. Obviously, we've got the trade deadline coming up and everything. Then we can really start getting into some of the draft topics as well.
I'm going to bring it up one more time. Again, if you are motivated to move, you can text Red Cross to 90999 to do a $10 donation to the Red Cross. They're on the ground in Southern California helping out with, I think they said it's 5 separate wildfires now, because a new one started overnight. So if you're motivated to move, also you can look up, just Google, how to help California wildfires. You're gonna get a bunch of stuff. Just read, before you start, whipping out your credit card and pulling stuff out. But I know
Yes.
one of the other charities is the Los Angeles Area Food Bank is in desperate need of help as well for donations of food items, as well as just donations to go get food items. I believe Chef Jose Andres World Kitchen is going to be on the ground to feed victims as well as first responders out there. And we didn't say this before, but all the gratitude and love in the world to the firefighters
Hmm.
that are out there, I mean, literally putting their lives on the line to try to save people, try to save property. Real life heroes, right? Like, that's just, there's no other way to put it. Absolute heroes. And again, we're with you, LA. We're
Yeah.
thinking about you. We know you'll bounce back strong, and we'll be here to at least give you a little bit of distraction when you can. Pop in with us, but we're thinking about you.
100%. 100%. Couldn't say it better myself. All right, everybody. We appreciate all of you for joining the show. Once again, please do, if you are in the LA area, please stay safe. And till next time, everybody, we'll see you.